Good morning and welcome to the Cannabis Advisory Commission Subcommittee on Social Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We will now start our meeting, bring the meeting to order. I don't have a roll call list. Oh, I guess I do. So let me call roll. Member Ogden. Present. I don't have a list, a roll call list. Minutes. Oh, I can go off the minutes. Yeah. All right. Member Ullman. Present. And Member Scott. He's on his way, and Aisha Goins' chair. I'm here. And Member Harris is here? Oh, she's absent. Okay. Member Harris is absent. We want to open the meeting to public comment. I want to allow for public comment. Please keep your comments minimum to 2 minutes, please, and for the sake of time. But we open the floor for public comment. No public comment? Great. I want to just, we have some minutes from the past CAC meetings, and we want to make sure that we enter them into consideration for approval. Did the members read the meeting minutes for August 31st, 2021?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Any corrections, or are we approving them?
Yes. Member Ullman, I'll make a motion to approve. I second. This is Kima Ogden.
August 31st meetings have been approved. Consideration for approval, there's an error on the agenda. It says September 7th. It's actually September 27th. So we'll make note of that error on the agenda. But does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes for September 27th?
This is Kima, I'll motion. Member Ullman, I second.
And I also approve, so those minutes are also approved. That's September 27th. October 4th, minutes for approval. Are there any questions? Any changes?
I motion to approve. I motion to second.
I also approve. Those minutes have been approved. And the last minutes are the minutes for October 18th. Motion, did you want to make a motion to approve, or is it, good morning, Member Scott?
Good morning.
Member Ullman, I'll make a motion to approve. A second.
Member Scott, I know that you just got here. We are approving minutes for October 18th.
Yes, I've read them.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. We'll approve the minutes for October 18th. We are now moving on to review of petition filed pursuant to NRS 678A. Salad Consulting on behalf of RNBW, petition to amend NCCRs 1456911 13 and 16 as requested by the Cannabis Advisory Commission. And this is for discussion. So has everyone had an opportunity to review the petition?
Yeah.
I have.
And you watched the video?
Didn't watch the video. It was the video of the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you read it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't watch the video either. I read it.
Before we move to the social equity component of this, I wanted to just say that I do recognize the petitioner is here, but I'd like to have a dialogue prior to us having some questions for the petitioner. All right. So we're going to move on to,
There will be a question time frame for him.
I didn't intend on that. However, if it's not in here, I guess we could bring it into open comment maybe. But I'd have to ask if the petitioner is here and we do want to bring him up. Is that possible?
Yeah, under the agenda items, you have agenda item 3, you could bring him up and ask him questions if that's something that you would like to do.
Okay. But if I move on to agenda item 4.
You can jump around.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to go in order.
All right, great. So agenda item 4 is the petition and opportunities for equity. And so what I wanted to do is open the discussion for the board. One of the things that I wanted to ensure is that we really were considering what the possibilities were. And I didn't want to pigeonhole us in that conversation. And so this is the time that we would talk about what opportunities could be possible in this petition, if any. So if any, go ahead.
I've got a few questions, Madam Chair. Now, the charge of this board is for the diversity, equity, and inclusion for the cannabis industry in Nevada. And so I was trying to figure out, based upon the petitioner's request, what exactly we would be doing. What about this involves social equity?
Well,
diversity and inclusion.
That's a great question, and that's really what I wanted.
Nothing does. Why we're here.
The petition.
Why we're here, right?
Yes, the way the petition is written, there is no DA&I, right? But that is the reason. This is just a petition. This isn't the end result.
Right. Okay.
And so what our subcommittee is charged to do is to identify places where there could be DE&I.
Okay.
Or possibility of DE&I.
Right, because this petition involves just those current cannabis facility owners and their ability to do outside events that involve cannabis and outside events that have 25,000 people or more per day involved in there.
That's the way I read the petition as well. But nothing, this is just a request.
Okay, gotcha.
And so because it's just a request, we have an opportunity to ask the request to shift. So that is what we're charged with right now.
Okay.
So
Member Ullman, for the record. So I did watch the video, and I think allowing both consumption license owners from the social equity pool and the independent pool and dispensary owners, they'll also, 20 of them have applied, opening up to that whole field. So now you do include social equity applicants and independent, which would also satisfy the inclusion and diversity component. Once these folks have all been awarded licenses, they will have the responsibility to deliver and comply with all regulations. So I think by opening up to this pool, now you have a good arena of folks that can take advantage of this opportunity.
I think that was the recommendation at our meeting last time. So kind of already I think that wasn't that established?
that was what it wasn't established, but that was one of the questions. I do want to point out that this petition only would include very few events, maybe upwards to like 7 events a year, because they are saying that it would be 25,000 people or more. So one of the things I wanted to point out in the petition is that I have to bring out my marked, is that the petitioner isn't the one that is asking for, the people that are holding the event isn't necessarily the ones asking to be a part of the event. So the event would be approved, and then petitioners would, licensees would then say that they wanted to be a part of the event. So how do we, when we're thinking about opening it up to lounges, I think that's a great idea, Member Ullman, but I also wonder I guess my concern is how do we ensure that it's an open market? So that would be one of my concerns. Anybody have any ideas about that?
When you say open market, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, if there are, so let's just say that one of the events is, what's one of the ones that's
The EDC or.
EDC? Yes. So let's say the event is EDC and EDC says that they want cannabis to be able to be sold there. How do we keep that opportunity open to the licensees instead of, or does the event host just say, I want this person, this person, this person?
Oh, like a bidding process, you want like more of a bidding process as opposed to them having one particular person they are trying to team up with every time?
Well, yeah, because that is what will happen. They will just, you know.
I'm sure there's already intention for that.
I don't know if we can do that because doesn't that buy into the host being able to choose who they want to do business with?
Yeah.
Well, Member Ullman, for the record, the dispensaries will already be involved because all the cannabis needs to run through the dispensary. So even if the event promoter picks a consumption lounge business to actually facilitate and execute the consumption area, all that will still be running through the dispensary. So the dispensary is going to win either way. It would just be, a free market to let the promoter do business with who they would like. And hopefully they would interview multiple people to see who the best fit is.
Well, you can require, like other contracts I've dealt with, you can require bids, at least 3 bids, and they justify their pick. You know, not just price wise, but the bid should break down how they're going to support the event and with safety regulations and whatnot, all within the bid. And they would have to answer for that if there was ever a question why they are letting someone monopolize this event every year.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and, you know, that's just something. I mean, it's, you know, whether we put in place that they have to secure a bid every year, 3 bids, they can't use the same person. Things like that can happen. I've done that in other contracts. So I know that that's something that's not you know, something that happens within the state and county requirements and other contracts that I've dealt with.
Member Ullman, for the record, I think by limiting this to 25,000 or more, that is where you prevent any kind of social equity, diversity and inclusion, because then you have to have a significant amount of money to be able to play ball. If we were to lower this down to 5,000 people, now you have much more opportunity for more people to start an event and then get folks in who don't just have the most amount of money. So you're really expanding the pool, you know, whether that be a, you know, hash bash or something like that. Now you're opening it up to a lot more entrepreneurs and creativity. And I think that 25,000 is where we really hit a wall. And
Well, see, I think that though the way that he's trying to structure it, it doesn't necessarily, because you have these big promoting people like already. You see, that's not where the social equity piece is going to come in. It's the people so that they don't worry about the 25,000 people. The event people do.
Yeah.
And we're not in that business.
Right.
So you would have to bring an event organizer, whoever's doing these events already. The social equity piece or the attachment piece shouldn't matter about how many people, because you're still supplying them with cannabis and you're partnering with them to some degree. We can also suggest that they partner with more than one. So we get 3 bids. We require that they get new bids every year, and they use more than one vendor. It may allow to break up that 25,000 with those organizations that actually can supply. Because once again, in our last discussion, that's a lot of product. You know, and that's a lot of product, and in that disposal period, like throwing, you know, trash in certain amount that's unused, things like that. There's a lot of waste that could happen. There's a lot of risk for one organization alone. I think it could be something that could allow more than one. organization to take part, and it'll make them actually go and reach into the community, not just for one favored person that they already probably have a partnership with, you know, because we know how this works, but they will have to go in, you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, let's keep it real. But they would have to go in and say, okay, I'm obligated to choose 3 vendors for 25,000 square foot. 25,000 people or more. Let's say it's 50. Because who knows how big these things can get if it's that level. You know what I mean? So I think that's something to consider.
But they could still pick all dispensaries, all huge dispensaries, MSOs, still leaving out smaller businesses and social equity applicants and diversity applicants. If we open it.
It's a start.
Yeah, it is. But opening it up to smaller venues includes everybody. And it means you don't have to have this significant amount of capital to start a business. It opens up new opportunities for new events and for smaller players to get in. That's relative to, you know, what they can handle as a new licensee. And I think there was a comment in the video from member Jillian that also pointed out smaller towns, smaller events. So I think that will really solve one of those issues.
This is Member Scott. I guess maybe we should put the onus back on the applicant to tell us how they are planning on incorporating DEI into their plan, because we can brainstorm all day, but we don't exactly know what they're, based upon this, it seems premature, but given the fact that the lounges haven't started operating yet, and the fact that there is no outdoor smoking component to any jurisdiction's rules. The only people that have opted into this are Clark County and the City of Las Vegas, and neither of those would allow outdoor smoking. And so why don't we put the onus back on the applicant to maybe revise this application or this petition to let us know how they believe DEI best fits with that. Then we as this committee can look at that plan and see if that fits in what we were thinking.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, you know, obviously we're still probably going to have to do this to a large degree, but at least it'll allow, like you said.
It'll give us a better framework, so we're not just brainstorming. We actually have a written petition from them. I mean, this is a pretty good start of the way they organized it, but I still had a lot of questions with regard to, you know, this has a liquor component, or I'm sorry, not a liquor, but it's a poly.
For that thing up.
What do they call it? Poly, well, that's the lawyer. It's a poly something.
Yeah, I know.
Poly substance intoxication. You know, Metro was very against alcohol associated with the lounges. I'm not sure how any of the law enforcement entities feel about alcohol associated with large scale events like 25,000 per day and having alcohol in.
Especially because the lounges don't have the alcohol component.
Member Ullman, for the record, this is already happening. People are already consuming cannabis at these events and alcohol. And so I think looking in the last 5 years of have there been, you know, any major issues? And obviously these events are still going on and all these, this use is still going on. So I feel like it's pretty easy to get the feedback from law enforcement of how's it been going the last 5 years. All we're doing is saying we want to put regulation and structure around this instead of having it be a free-for-all, which is really what it is right now.
Right. And this is Member Scott, and I agree. I think law enforcement could best tell us if there have been any major issues with the, and I never heard that word, poly substance intoxication. But again, it seems like we're kind of, you know, rushing the issue. I mean, we went from, you know, medical to recreational to the lounges and we've studied it. We've gone, I know that some people think we're going too slowly, but it's new to us. I mean, it's been, you know, in California, it's been in Oregon, it's been in Denver, in Colorado and other cities. And so we're just kind of slowly learning the process. And again, I think there's probably a need for this because it is happening already. Just like I think the lounge need stemmed from people smoking everywhere and anywhere in downtown and the garages and hotel rooms. And, you know, you're inviting 42 million people here a year. to enjoy Las Vegas. Marijuana, cannabis is part of that. And they need somewhere legal to do that. And so this is kind of, I think, an extension, and it will be an extension. But I'd like to see, again, I'd like to see the applicant, based upon our desire to have more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the process, tell us how they intend to do it, rather than us kind of doing their work for them. So.
And I can appreciate that, but what I will say is I did have a meeting with the petitioner personally, and I did ask him, dialogue with him about the DE&I component. And then when we did have the meeting, he didn't really have an opportunity, or he didn't have an explanation. So I thought, and to be honest, I read it and I didn't really know how to insert DE&I into it. And so I thought, for the petition's sake and for the sake of transparency and what this board was meant to be, I thought it made sense to have the dialogue and to discuss openly what could be possible, because I don't assume that the petitioner just left us because I am DE&I. But I don't think the petitioner's intent was to not have a DE&I component. Probably couldn't think it through, because I had a hard time thinking through what could be possible. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have an open dialogue prior to putting the onus on the petitioner, because it is our responsibility to uphold this space and to be the influencer of this space. And so that is why I wanted to have an open dialogue. And I think Member Ogden and Member Ullman has had some really great ideas. One of the ideas that I think is powerful is the RFP idea for the event host. I think having an RFP process to that also would create some structure for the CCB to not have to do a lot of back and forth. And it could be that, because we are still talking about, I did hear Member Ullman say, it should be opened up to smaller events, but this is just a pilot. And so because it's a pilot, I recognize the need to just have it for large events. Saying that to say, I do think that, and Member Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but when these large events come into town, in order for them to be able to come into town, don't they have to negotiate so many minority-owned businesses? And no, they don't.
They don't. And that's only when you have things like, I know if you do a construction project like in the rehabilitation area, that's required that you have X number of minority contractors, things of that nature. Big events like this don't require any DEI in them at all. So.
Member Ullman, if I can make a recommendation. So if the promoter should have to pay to be able to have a consumption area at their event. And if they do contract with a social equity or diversity applicant, so two of those pools, the fee could be less money for them as a thank you for, hey, now you only have to pay whatever it is, $10,000. If you go ahead and you partner with an established licensed retailer who's bringing in a significant amount more money, you would have to pay a little bit more. So it's an advantage for the promoter to support diversity and social equity and less money out of pocket. So that would be one way that you could encourage, not tell them what to do, but encourage that behavior.
The other thing I will add to that for consideration, because what you don't want to do is leave out people who are minorities but didn't win on social equity piece, because that happens. There's minority owners right now. That would exclude them from being able to partner and those people getting the same fees and credit. So you need to consider that not everybody who applies is going to be social equity. It still could be minority. So keep that in mind when you're putting these things, recommendations in place, because you're excluding a group of people that could possibly fulfill the same thing. So how will we include that?
And I was just thinking when the chair indicated about these 25,000 events, I guess I have to put on the hat of if I'm an event organizer, are there a sufficient number of DEI social equity applicants that are qualified to even have a pool that I could do an RFP to? Or would now you start reaching out of state now? And I know there's a need to, I know, but no, I'm just saying, but I'm just saying that in Nevada, is there a sufficient pool so that an event coordinator would be able to send out an RFP to people in Nevada that would be able to fulfill the roles that we or they need in order to make a successful event? And that would be the problem if there's not enough people.
So that brings up Member Ullman's point of why this should go out to consumption lounges and not licensees. And I actually agree with that because the consumption lounge will have the independent, because so we have to be very clear on how we separate that, right? Not the retail consumption lounges, because those retail consumption lounges are actually retailers. So if this was out to the independent licensees, the independent consumption lounge licensees, then you'd have more of an opportunity to have, to Kima's point, social equity applicants and also new independent applicants, which could just be an extension of their business, right? Instead of having a space where the retailers, and I don't, this isn't, because I can hear my thoughts saying, Aisha, don't go against the retailers. That's not my intent. My intent is to offer new opportunities to the new business licenses, right? I think it makes more sense to extend, to your point, Member Scott, to extend licensing in a rhythm, right? So the rhythm would be the retailers, consumption lounge, this, if that makes sense.
And Madam Chair, do we know where the state is with regard to the independent consumption lounge licenses? Have they been issued already?
No.
Okay.
Applications just went.
So the application just went out. So this looks like
Closed on the
But I
27th.
will say, just to your point, like, I don't feel like it is right to leave out retail licensees. Like, I would have a lounge and I should be able to
Of course.
partner and get the same benefits as somebody that just is new. I could be a struggling dispensary because I'm minority, because I don't get the same opportunity. I'm trying to grow and be like Planet 13. I'm a small mom and pop. So point is, I know that there's some area like, licensees get these opportunities, and that leaves a bad taste for certain people, but it's neither here or there. We all are in a situation, together, and we put in a lot of time and effort into teaching everyone what works and what does not work. It's only right, which is why he initially wanted to go with original retailers, because we have the experience. We know compliance. We've been dealing with it.
Yes.
But we also still deal with discrimination. You know what I'm saying? So there's things.
Right.
And so my point of that is, please, when we're considering this, I think it should be even par when it comes to what type of license you have. If you have it, you have it.
And I agree.
It's just, how do you connect the equity piece to it? And how do you connect the equity applicant in that ownership to this application? So we just need to get to that.
And I completely agree. And I think that no one should be left out of the mix. But I guess for the charge for this subcommittee is just for the DEI portion.
Yeah.
So that's why we're trying to figure out just
But
how that part.
including them in the DEI
Sure,
portion.
yes.
Do not exclude.
And I wish
because
this meeting had happened, or the DEI portion had happened in the very beginning of the process, because we're kind of like now playing catch up in terms of trying to get now some diversity in the industry.
I agree with
I wish it would have started from
100%.
day one in 2014 or whatever it
yes.
came into being. So
100%.
I wish it would have happened then. Then it would just have been a natural
Because
progression.
guess what? That struggle was way harder
Right.
for people
Right.
that are in it right now.
Right.
That had to go through what they did to be successful or to be still standing. So.
Member Ullman, for the record, so another suggestion would be you have to partner with a dispensary and a consumption lounge applicant, social equity or diversity, where they are partnering, because this would be something large to facilitate and execute. So you have a component where people are purchasing it that the dispensary would oversee, and then the actual consumption area where people are partaking in cannabis. So now you're encouraging partnership. But I do think leaving it as an opportunity for both retailers and consumption lounges, and then having having an incentive for the promoter to have a lesser fee if they partner with social equity applicants, both that are dispensaries and or consumption lounges, drives it in the right direction. But again, all dispensaries dispensaries that are partnering with consumption lounges will have a benefit of moving more product because it all has to be moved through the dispensary. So if I have a license for a consumption lounge and I choose to partner with Top Notch, then now you have two entities getting a benefit of selling more cannabis. And that is, I think, a point that needs to be made. The retailers will still benefit even if it was decided that only consumption lounges, licensees can take this opportunity.
And that's that, member, Chair, that was one of the points that I was making is that, and Member Ogden, my apologies if I ruffled your feathers a little, but the point I was making is that the retailer, all of the product will be coming from the retailers consistently. And so the retailers will be getting a benefit because all of the product will always come from the retailers. One of my concerns, and this isn't something that we need to address here, but one of my concerns is one of the things that Member Ullman brought up is, how does that product show up unused, like if it's not used, because they have to do this bulk order, and then what if they don't sell it? And so I can see the importance of partnering with the retail, which also brings us back to why the petitioner said to partner with the retail stores and not bring it back out, because it brings it back to who takes responsibility of that product.
And this is Member Scott, and I know that there are rules, at least when the city of Las Vegas passed its consumption lounge ordinance back in 19, there was a process whereby they had to destroy the product that was not being used. They had to combine it with sand and some other materials. I know. But it was required because you didn't want people now taking the product outside. And then when the state changed the rules to allow the lounges themselves to be able to sell. And then there's also an issue with delivery. I mean, are the lounges also going to be able to deliver? That's not part of the current ordinances with regard to lounges being able to sell. It's also not part of the ordinances for anything to be smoked outside or to be delivered by the lounges. So it's going to take a really wholesale change of those two jurisdictions, at least in Southern Nevada, which have opted into this process to make all of this work.
A couple of things. I think this is Member Ogden. It was discussed in the last meeting where the only discarded product would be from the consumer. So like if they're selling a small amount to them at a time, that's what gets chucked.
Correct.
The product that's kind of sitting in this bin or wherever, that should be able to go back into inventory. So the waste, I don't think hopefully that could be managed to a level, and we shouldn't worry about that too much. But what the other part of this, going back to what Member Ullman was talking about, I think like the two different types of contracts, like consumption lounge and retail, I think what his proposal was basically when you do deal with one, they have their own contracts.
Right.
You don't want an event person is now not going in trying to make contracts between all these entities that they have to, the Cannabis Compliance Board has to monitor this. That's why there's a partnership. So you would really, when you're relying on one or the other, let's say you work with a particular lounge, they already have their dispensary contracts and partnerships, and same goes for the other way around. If you have the retail piece, you're going to be connected either to a consumption line or you're going to be one. So I don't know if that's either also a worry. I think if you put in place that they have to be the basics, like you have to have two vendors, I don't care who it is, that show whoever put them in place, because it could be the consumption lounge, it could be this. Two vendors that have some kind of minority ownership or social equity applicant, you get X, Y, and Z. And that's where we're here. That's why I think if we bring it in, instead of worrying about so far spread out with the amount, the waste, the this, the that, I think that's where, we can really just kind of get down to, hey, you need at least 2 vendors with this qualifications. You need, these certain little equity pieces, and let them worry about it. And then they have to just show it, whoever contracted with it. It shouldn't matter as long as they're connected to it.
Do you think that, this is chair, which just sounds weird, but do you think that there should be a requirement to say, like, we're talking about 25,000 people. So should there be a vendor? I don't want to encroach on someone else's business. That's also what I'm struggle with, right? So even I'm an advocate for social equity, but then also there is just business, because I'm a small business owner and I don't like people telling me what to do with my business, right? But is there a space to say, for every 10, that if the person says that they want to have cannabis offered in a 25,000 person event, is there a space to say that we would say, okay, well, you should have this many? No, because then we're telling them what to do.
It needs to be an option, but there needs to be benefits to the option. Because this is what I will say as someone in the business as well, like you have several businesses, whatever. We were propositioned, for other minority inclusion pieces, like, hey, use these people, they're a minority. But the truth is their product wasn't good.
Yeah.
And that wasn't fair to me.
Right.
And just because we're minority doesn't mean we should just get it. I just want a level playing field.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So, but don't force me to use someone because they're minority and their product stinks.
Yes.
That's not fair either as a business owner. And that's what I tried to explain to this organization that wanted to out people who weren't using minority other vendors. And I said, no, that's not right. What we should do is, XYZ. But point is I don't think we should be telling, like, it shouldn't be mandatory. It definitely should be an option. We just have to figure out what benefits would come from exercising that option.
I agree.
Over regulation and telling someone how to run their business. Instead, incentivize, make fines less. Let's say, for an example, if you do business with a dispensary that is not a social equity, diversity, or inclusion dispensary, then it would be, $10,000 to have this opportunity. If you do business with someone else, it's $2,500. Now that is probably going to be passed on to the entities. So then that social equity applicant or diversity applicant would pay less to partner with these big events. And so that would be the benefit. If they want to pay more, then partner with, a bigger entity. But it's an incentive. We also don't have that many social equity, diversity applicants.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to figure out. If we actually knew how many there were, if there are only 2.
There's only like 3.
Or 3.
Well, there's going to be 10 consumption venues, right? And there's going to be 10 independent.
Well,
of those 10 independent, let's say 8 of them qualify as diversity applicants, and we have 3 retailers that are technically diversity retail owners.
Right.
That's it. 3 out of 100. So,
But like she said,
I guess there's 10 spots. I mean, there's 10 diversity or social equity spots. How many people will actually do it, and how many people are going to be qualified? Again, I wish I knew how many people have actually applied.
that actually came out yesterday. So 100 people.
Do we know?
100 people, 50 independent, 30 social equity, and then 20 retailers.
And that's just applied, but they haven't gone through the process of.
And how many
weeding those out.
retailers?
Yeah, it just 20.
So in the end, so to
Interesting. 50 independent.
to Member Ullman's point, the numbers is just 100 total for all the people, right? But regardless, there will only be 10 social equity.
Correct.
And then there's 3 currently now, right? So that's 13.
Oh, there's 3 current social equity applicants?
Owners.
Owners.
Right?
Okay, gotcha.
So, but I do want to point out something Member Ullman said. So I'm laughing because we have an idea that the host should pay a fee. But in the petitioner's petition, the host isn't paying a fee. There's a one-time, non-refundable administration processing. 6, this
Yeah, I've seen those fees.
$2,000.
2010, 20, what is it?
So I do just want,
Yeah.
I had that highlighted originally, but I didn't raise the question because it wasn't really important to that process. But to Member Ullman's point, if we want to, if the host pays a fee, because currently that's not the petitioner's request, but if the host pays a fee, what you're considering is that that fee could be discounted so that would be an incentive. And I think that that's a great idea. And that is without saying, this is how you should do business.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. Let me just, I hate to be like, think this way, but all you have, like, let's say EDC wants to partner with big global dispensary.
Okay.
Because we know, I won't name any.
Right, right.
They'll go, I'll pay that fee for you because I could afford, I make 10 times more than everybody. Let me pay that fee for you. I think if we can do a tax that for the event itself, a higher tax maybe for the event overall, it would then, that's a significant difference for them incentive wise to go, hey, let me not play games around here. I got, instead of, because they do it in the dispensaries, we got to pay higher taxes right now. So I know that can happen because they do it. My point is something that really impacts the event itself because they're going to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
This fee is a spit in the bucket. No one, I'll pay that fee right now.
The
For
promoter.
somebody. Right. And then, so shit, all year long. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. So my point is, forgive me. But I think we should think about something on the back end, maybe more so on if.
You know what, Member Ogden, you bring up a great point. And actually, maybe we're not thinking about this wholly. Maybe I'm not even bringing in my own ideology of how I think about equity. And maybe it makes sense to just tax it and that money goes to equity.
There we go. Maybe we're getting there. Something.
And the promoter would pay the tax or the tax from the sales?
Everybody's paying the tax.
No, but you're saying, right. You're saying, so the promoter would have to pay a fee, let's say whatever, $10,000. Then that would be taxed and that money should go to equity.
No, the tax would be on the event overall, like whatever income from the event. Like when you buy product and you pay 10% and then another 10, percentage on top of that. I think that, no, it's for overall event tax, like not on top of the fee, because that's just nothing.
I guess we have to.
Right.
This is Member Scott. I think we also have to figure that, someone's got to regulate this. Someone's got to be in charge of collecting that tax, figuring out that's the correct tax, auditing them. And we may putting a lot of onus on the state to do that. And so, and again, do they have enough? I was just looking at the part about the enforcement officers. Is there enough enforcement officers to be able to manage this particular new type of venue that we're opening up? And that part I don't know either.
And see, I don't know if that's even our place to worry about it. I think we just have to make the recommend. I know what you mean, because it can't be unrealistic.
Right, all right. I mean, because again, you can put everything on paper, but unless you enforce it, it doesn't have any meaning. And I agree with you with regard to the fact that people will go ahead and the incentive is not really incentive unless you need it to be. So if you don't need the $2,000, you can pay that all day long. And so it has to be, I guess, maybe called something different than an incentive. I hate to do a mandate because again, I know you don't want people, and I know they don't want people involved in their business, but it has to be something a little stronger. But again, I worry that there won't be enough of a pool for them to choose from. If we're going to mandate they do it or incentivize it, there just won't be the pool. I wish we could see, or, further down the process with regard to the social equity applicants, how many actually are qualified and actually get through the full state process to be qualified.
Well, they're going to give those 10 social equity applicant, like there'll be at least the 10. There'll be the 10. There'll be the and diversity.
But I guess how do we know that? I mean, everyone, just like when people apply for jobs, they're applying for jobs they may not be qualified for. They just want to apply for the job.
7 qualified.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and applicants.
Okay.
So regardless of what else they doing, I know I got 7.
Right. I don't think that's the question because the application process that's the purpose of that,
Right.
is to make sure these are social
Well-
equity pieces and they're real.
Yeah, and just like we did when the diversity, I'm sorry, when the dispensaries first came online, all applications were taken. Whoever had the,
Yeah.
what was the fee? I don't remember the fee.
It was 10.
It was steep. It was a
Yeah.
steep fee. Whoever had that steep fee and had the 200,000 or 250,000 in liquid cash, every application was taken, and then they whittled them down to those persons who truly had knowledge of the industry and all the other qualifications. So. No, it was more than
No,
$5 grand.
it's more than that.
I'm sorry. So again, I wish that we were further down in that process to see how many people will make up, like I said, even your 7, somebody may fall out, they may have they may move it. So you may not have full 10. And
There were
then
30.
But saying that we did, we had
Yeah,
10
let's do it.
social equity
Yeah.
and 10 independent, which are many going to be diversity.
Right.
And then we have, 4 roughly diversity retail owners in the market out of 100.
Right.
Has anyone also looked at how the alcohol contracts are set up for these events and, how they're operating? What is the license to serve alcohol? What does the promoter have to pay? How do they bid on who gets that? And I think maybe we could get some best practices from there. But these promoters make a significant amount of money from people in our community. They bring a lot of money to the community as well, and fun. But having cannabis at these events will definitely bring in a market. It'll also mitigate anyone bringing in outside non-licensed cannabis. So I know that's a concern for the industry. Yeah. So
So I don't think the alcohol piece, though, has any social equity in regulations either. It's not going to help us in that sense, but just the structure of how they do it. We're not here for the structure.
Right.
That's the thing.
But
Like, we have this.
What we do at the city is we have a license for a liquor caterer.
Yep.
So if you as a business that you want to put on, you have a dress shop, you want to have an opening event, you hire, so you don't want to go out and get a liquor permit.
Right.
You hire a liquor caterer who has a license to provide liquor. You hire that person, and then that person provides liquor for your event.
Yes.
They take the empties or they take the other bottles and they go about their business. So maybe that's something that can be kind of incorporated in this type of structure where you have, the promoter wouldn't have to have a cannabis license, but you could have a cannabis caterer license whereby they hire that person brings product in, and then that person takes product out.
I'm laughing because that's a bill already. So
I knew that. I was channeling you, Chair. So, but I think that made a lot of sense for, again, those persons who didn't want to go through the process of qualifying for like a liquor license or couldn't qualify for a liquor license, but you wanted it for certain events, you'd have a liquor caterer, maybe have a cannabis caterer.
I think that's a great idea. I love that idea.
Make sure I get credit for that.
But I think one of, again, because I will go back and bring the petitioner up and ask some of these questions. I think that that's only fair, but I do want to point out that I agree. I like the tax idea. I think it's a simple solution. It doesn't encroach on the owners, host or otherwise. I think it's simple. I hear what you're saying, Member Scott. We don't want to put more work on the Cannabis Compliance Board, but for the sake of just saying it, it could just be $1 more per product, right? And then this way you count how many products were sold. That's how much goes into the equity pool.
Well, they do a percentage because that's what they do.
Is that
Like I said, in
okay?
the dispensary, it's a percentage, it's a tax, it's a percentage of overall income and sales. And it should be something to that level because I think that that's significant enough for someone to really think about this.
I agree.
And then, like you said, I think it'd be great if we can put the onus right back on the city and state and say, hey, look, take this money and that you made, because honestly, it goes there. It doesn't go back into anything else. Take that pot and put it into a social equity programs and into that full program.
And what do you,
Great.
I guess, what do you envision that program looking like? Is that somewhere where you're training people to become
Should be
equity
grants and
applicants?
low interest loans is what it should be.
Because
And education pieces.
Agreed. I mean,
For the record, the only concern is if we do a tax, how do we prevent that tax going down to the consumers and the patients consuming? And they're just saying, okay, perfect, we'll put that tax on them. And then the promoter doesn't have to end up paying anything and they're the one making all the money. So I feel like that's why the fee, the promoter paying the fee to have this opportunity might be logistically more easier than a tax. And if we put a tax in, does that have to happen in statute? And so is it more cumbersome than just saying, no, here's your fee, promoter, you need to pay this. Also, if we do decide that these are going to be less than 25,000, the bigger the event, the higher the fee. And then it's all relative to what they're bringing in.
well, I do want to point out that this is just because I want to make sure we all are on the same space, that this is a pilot. And so the pilot is for the 25. I'd like for the pilot to be considered at 25, because then what we're doing is we're leaving room for the other conversation to be had at another time.
And
right?
seeing how
But
it goes. Yeah.
But I do understand what you're saying. I do hear Member Ullman. I do think that there is the organizer is taking on its own responsibility by offering cannabis to come to their event, right? But there also is a place where we, as a state, we want safe consumption. That's in the best interest of the state, and it's in the best interest of the health and wellness of the people who come and visit this state. And so we want safe consumption. I don't think charging the hosts money is going to open up an opportunity for them to say, we want this idea in our event. And I definitely, as much as I think everybody should have payment, I also understand that the most important thing for Nevada is our health and how that shows up. And safe consumption contributes to that. And having this in this space, we hope, is going to offer safe consumption. But I do believe that the persons doing the business should have to pay. I do agree with that. I think 2,000 isn't enough, and I don't like taxing businesses unnecessarily. But I don't think 2,000 is enough, right? I do think that there could be a cannabis special event tax. I don't think that that's far-fetched, because there's event tax all over the place. So I don't think that there could be
Get rid of those resort taxes.
there could be a cannabis special event tax, and that tax could go to equity. And this way, we don't have that space where we're saying you didn't do DE&I. And there could also be an incentive that says we bypass a tax if you use an equity applicant or a minority applicant. I think that that's a good play.
And remember, this is Member Scott. I mean, this is a administrative processing fee. So you'd be taking money. So again, someone would have to review these applications. And if you don't charge anything, you now have the state taking on an extra burden to review these. They don't have the staff members. Again, I have to keep harping on the staff issue, because again, you could write down anything, but if it's not feasible to do it and not able to do it, you're just running up against the wall. So what do you envision the length of this pilot program being? Like, is it a year-long pilot?
1 year.
To go back to Member Ullman's point of the fee, and like, maybe that's it. And just to confirm, this is kind of where you were going with this, having this administrative fee and then an additional social equity fee to separate the fees that can be, if you do use a person, a company or business that has that piece, that fee is excluded. It's a flat amount is what I'm saying, instead of a tax, because like to his point, to Member Scott's point, it may not be something they could even put in place. But if you say, hey, this fee, flat fee, let's say it's $100,000, I don't care what it is, X amount, that fee will go into the pot of programming. It just goes straight into it, wherever that pot is. Like, let's put it there. And that's where that goes. And then we know they don't have to figure out the amount. They don't have to figure out pulling out taxes. things like that. It's just two different separate fees.
Either way, I don't think we can touch the administration fee. To member Scott's point, administration fee goes to the CCB. I wasn't interested in that. I just don't think it's enough.
I don't either.
Just period, right? That fee goes to the CCB, and to your point, there's processes and overhead and whatever that
And
looks
enforcement,
like.
because I'm assuming that also goes
And
to enforcement, so,
yes.
yeah.
So I just don't think that that's enough just in
No.
general, but I do think that there could be a cannabis special event fee, whatever that fee is, flat, whatever, however it makes sense for the tax board, the CCB board, and then that fee could be a contributor to an equity fund.
Yeah, yes.
I think that, and then that doesn't encroach on, as we have discussed openly, we don't want to be telling business owners how to do their business and what that business should look like. But then also they are still being accountable to funding equity or to being a part of some point of DE&I.
Okay, yeah, that basically, I just named it something else, but that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's going to, okay, because that fee in general should just go straight to social equity. And if they get that piece fulfilled,
Right.
they don't have to pay it.
Madam Chair, while we're on this financial page, on page 6, the $200,000 in liquid assets, if these are already dispensary owners, so I mean, what's the need for the 200,000 in liquid assets?
I'm certain that, I'm not going to speak for the petitioner. We can ask him that.
Okay.
But it probably has more to do with liability, right? Because there is a lot of.
Well, that means you probably need to have insurance. That means the insurance component of this.
But insurance doesn't cover, cannabis insurance is different than regular business insurance.
Right.
And so when now we're extending the business outside of just a retail store and into an area.
Right.
And so I'm sure that this has something to do with the bond or whatever the case may be.
For special events, Member Scott, for the record, for special events, we normally require a $2 million to $5 million insurance policy. And that means that's going to cover you, because you're inviting 25,000 people. $200,000 is not going to cover if there's an accident or someone gets, the crowd surge or whatever it may be. So normally in any special event, we require $2 million, $5 million, up to $5 million worth of insurance coverage. So they have to have some coverage for the people that are involved. I'm not sure about the $200,000 issue, but there has to be an insurance component.
I think the insurance component is more important than how much liquid assets you have. It's a moot point.
Yep.
I think they have to show, and I know it's not in here, but I think they would have to show that anyway for a business license, any business license.
Well, but because they're outside of their premises, I think that's the premises, like the chair was saying, was one thing. But when you start taking it on the road and having it at a, like say the Speedway or something, they're going to require you to get $5 million worth of insurance.
Right.
And that's why, again, having it, I know it's a pilot program, but you could change the pilot. Only having it at these huge events continues to only let the richest people play ball. And I think if we were to look, and also as a pilot, if we try a couple small, a couple big, then we'd have more data to actually put in a actual program. Then I would love to see the tax revenue from that, which is all new tax revenue, nothing that should be going to the schools. And that goes into a fund to create low interest loans and grants for new license holders, which many places are already doing. Oakland just did it and took $4 million and put it in to those kind of programs. But
let me ask this: is this 200,000 and all that? What is this onus on the event promoter or on the dispensary or
It looks like
consumption lounge?
Yeah, it looks like it's the applicant.
licensee.
Yeah, for the person applying for the license, they have to show that they have 200,000 in liquid assets. Well, I'm not sure why you have to show that.
so the promoter,
Are we ready?
Just says the initial application must include the following, and then a one-time non-refundable fee, and then affirmation that the applicant controls liquid assets in the amount of at least 200,000.
So the requirement, just to confirm, recap, the applicant itself is going to be either the lounge or the dispensary, or one of them. Let's say you put in place where they have the event, the promoter has to have 2 or 3, right? Because we're going to try to diversify this. If that's the case, which of those would apply? And I think that's all based on your group and who has it, but why is why doesn't because the richest person in the room is probably the person throwing this event, not the dispenser.
I know.
And I guess that's my
So
concern
that's
is
who
that-
should be providing and be
Yeah.
I
more
think that's my
responsible.
concern is that the fact that I don't know if it's the dispensaries want to hold the event. They want to just
No,
supply product to
they
the
just want
event.
to supply the product.
So again, that's why I think the whole cannabis caterer issue comes in where the dispensary has the ability to supply it to a EDC or a NASCAR or whatever it may be that has that type of
It might-
attendance.
it might-
And so again, I just don't think that the applicants will be putting on, will be putting on the event, and they'll have to hire somebody from the outside, social equity applicant or a dispensary to supply it.
But some dispensaries might want to put on the event. I know that was discussed last time in the video.
Right.
And we don't know because, yeah.
I think, why can't,
So
on the application itself, both the promoter, the event host, and the retailer both be on the application, or everybody be listed on the application, and they have some risk, because that's the problem. They don't want the risk.
Right, and that's why if I were the promoter, I'd want to hire the liquor caterer, or the cannabis caterer, because now the risk is, you still bear some risk, because when the lawsuit's filed, they don't just sue one person, they sue the group. But that's why it's always better, I would think it would be better to lessen the risk on the behalf of the promoter, to have a liquor caterer, cannabis caterer type of company I could call up and say, supply this, just like transportation. The promoter doesn't do the transportation. They hire a company that does transportation. They have the insurance and everything else.
What's the difference, let me, just for clarity, because what's the difference from what you're saying with the cannabis caterer to just a dispensary that supplies it, or?
Right, the dispensary would be, the dispensary would be the caterer.
Okay, so the same, you're
Yeah,
just,
so
okay.
if you're you at the dispensary is not going to put a NASCAR event on. But NASCAR's coming to town, and they want a cannabis portion of that event. And sorry, NASCAR, don't sue me. I'm just you're the example. So that they would say, well, they would call up ABC Dispensary. Hey, can you supply X number of people and product to our event? We're having a cannabis garden down there. Can you go and supply that? And so they would just call.
That's how it's written now, though, in a sense, like, because that's how it's written. It's like it's written just like that. And my point is, put this onus back on the promoter too.
Yes.
Let them be
Yes.
responsible to some degree.
Here's
They
the-
should, I mean, they're the ones, if you
No, I
have
agree.
EDC and you
Yeah.
can do 25,000 people,
Right.
which most dispensary owners or especially social equity people
Right.
with less money, they're not going to be able to, they're going to be like, I just want to supply this. I want to have the
But
compliance in
again,
place for that piece.
But the risk associated, do they want to take that risk on? I mean, why not have a third
promoter?
party? Yeah, why not hire a third party to do it rather than you?
Promoters should take
Because
the
they're
risk
the
because they're
event.
throwing the
They're the
event.
event.
I understand.
Also, one thing to consider is if something did happen to someone and they have cannabis in their system, there is no way to prove they bought it from that cannabis vendor that's there. That should be the liability of the person putting on the event.
I want to make sure that we're staying on topic. We're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. So I want to bring us back. This is spirited conversation, but I want to bring us back to DE&I. And as we're discussing DE&I, one of the points I did hear that was DE&I specific has to do with how does the event host identify the vendors that they want to use? Is that what I heard everyone talking about? I think one of the processes that we could put in is point blank, the host has to go to the CCB and not the vendor. And then the vendor would send a list of qualified caterers, let's call it cannabis caterers, to that host, and the host would choose. This way, there's a list, and on that list, those persons who want to be a part of that process have already gone through the process of being a caterer, including social equity. So it's a broad ask, and they have to, and the CCB says what could qualify you. Because maybe what we've done is, in listening to you speak, maybe what we've done is we haven't put in, there's a process that's missing, right? And so we are all assuming that everyone is qualified to do an event. And maybe that's not the right assumption. Maybe listening to you all, what makes a better sense is the Cannabis Compliance Board identifies who's qualified to host events. And then that way it's open fully, right? It's any licensee, because this way, any licensee, because cultivators, producers, any licensee could apply to be able to host an event if they're a qualified hosting for this particular pilot. And then that way, the Cannabis Compliance Board says, this person is social equity, this person's minority, and they put out a list available to those 25,000 or more events. So then that makes the playing field equal. And then they identify on that list, just same way the city does. These persons are minority owned. They have like asterisks, and then I believe beneath it, it says that what the asterisks identify. They have initials for all of them. And maybe that is a better way of having some clear level playing field where now everyone isn't. And then it's not just isolated too.
See, I think what would happen if you did that too, though, it would be the same process afterwards. So let's say you have a list. You go, okay, I'm going to go to these 5 people. There should still be like, okay, you get 3 bids. You identify a social equity person or a minority owned business within your structure. And this fee will come on, whatever.
Yes.
And then it goes down from there, because these things still should be all part of this process.
I agree.
But that's a good place to start.
And I guess that with the bid process, sometimes when you get the lowest bidder, you may get the lowest quality product. And so I'm a little concerned about that. It makes sense to have a qualified person's list, and then let that person or let that promoter choose from the list.
Yes.
Rather than going through the bid process, because again, you don't want the lowest quality bidder. I mean, you want the bidder that's going to supply the best product.
Well, no, because the thing is, they can still go to, because the list isn't just social equity, it's people who can do this event.
Yes.
So that's what she's saying. So let's say their friend is on that list. You're
Right.
just going to go pick that friend. Now, if you do a bid process with that, you can still say, price isn't always the factor. It's a lot of things. Like I would want in my bid, how are you going to supply this, your process, your safety regulations, how compliant, well, maybe if you have any compliance issues, do you have insurance for this? Whatever pieces that part, because that's a sub part of the bidding process that we could put in, make recommendations for. But that part, then you would say, okay, I chose this person. They were a little bit higher than the least one, but this is why. Their quality of this, got us reviews like so, whatever we factor in. So it doesn't mean cheapest. People don't always do the cheapest bid because it's cheapest. They do,
Well, sometimes.
it's a lot of different factors.
But again, and then these are independent, these are privately owned businesses. Why shouldn't they be able to pick from that list of qualified DEI people, whatever, transportation people, whatever? They pick, again, and sometimes you pick the people that you used to doing business with because they've done a great job for you time and time again. So I don't think we should limit them to having to do this bid process. And again, I guess so there must be then, if the person who doesn't get it, do they have now the opportunity to protest that the other person got it? And then you have to prepare a whole process for that as well.
I think that, Member Scott, the point of just having a list made available,
and then
letting
the
owner, letting the event host choose from that. And then also to Member Ullman's point, incentivizing them to use DE&I. I think that makes it very transparent. And I still believe, Member Ogden, that there also should be fees, right? There just should be cannabis special event fees from now until the end of time, just period. Because there is, and my reasoning for that is because having liquor, having a cannabis, having any type of vendor adds to that event. It adds value to that event. And so because of that, there should be some feedback to either the state, the city, whoever. In this case, we're talking about equity.
And I know you may get on me about not sticking to the subject, but what's envisioned? Like I said, it's an event with 25,000 people. Is it like a beer garden where you're just limited to this portion of the event and the rest of the event's going on around you? Or is it just 25,000 people can just smoke wherever they want in the event? What do you think that looks like?
To bring the petitioner up, do you think this is a good time to bring the petitioner up? So I'd like to go back to agenda item 3 in the review of the petition and ask Solid Consulting if he doesn't mind coming up. We have some questions and some discussion we'd like to have if he's here and available.
Yes.
Yes, I am happy to. Thank you, Chair.
Could you read your name for the record?
Sure. Chris Anderson with Solid Consulting on behalf of RNBW for the record.
Thank you. It seems that the members here have a couple of logistic questions, and then we have, I'm sure you've heard us, we've talked through some things that we'd like to just kind of ask that are in regards to the petition and how it's been presented. And I'm going to just let Member Byron Scott start.
Hi, Mr. Anderson, thanks for appearing today. What do you believe the social equity or DEI looks like in this petition? What do you think that they can do to add to this petition?
Yeah, so one really straightforward thing, and one thing that I omitted, because this petition was submitted just a couple days after the board finalized cannabis consumption lounge regulations. And so this was basically already written before lounges were passed. And I kind of didn't know what the timeline was going to be or anything like that. But, after seeing, the really good recommendations that, came out of this subcommittee and the CAC as a whole, and were implemented for consumption lounges, a lot of which is contained in this petition. If I could go back, I would have definitely added consumption lounges as establishments that were qualified to apply under this petition and participate in temporary cannabis events, particularly since now we are going to have certified social equity licensees in the marketplace. By no means did I intend to exclude that group. That group didn't exist, when the petition was written. And now, especially after seeing yesterday, the Cannabis Compliance Board's announcement of, how many applications they received, it's pretty clear to me, and to the chair's point, we're going to have qualified social equity applicants who are going to become licensees, hopefully, in the first half of next year, around the time that I would hope to see potentially a temporary cannabis event happen. So I would absolutely add consumption lounges as establishments that are allowed to apply.
That's great.
Under this process. And I think it's a great proposal too, to create some kind of an incentive structure for an event that chooses to partner with a social equity or minority owned business. I'm not sure. The last time I looked at the CCB's list of licensees, I don't recall seeing an asterisk or anything designating which dispensaries or licensees were minority owned. And so I think that would be really helpful. That would be just a kind of a minimum requirement that an event owner or promoter would at least know who is minority owned and who's not. Obviously, you'll know who social equity licensees are, but I think, to Member Ogden's point, creating some kind of a financial incentive structure to partner with at least one minority owned and or social equity licensee would be, I think, meaningful.
Okay. And then thank you for that. I appreciate that. And then for the $200,000, I'm assuming because you thought the $200,000 toward liquid assets, did that have a meaning to you when you put together the petition?
I included that mostly because that's what the board saw fit to include in cannabis consumption lounge applications. Now, again, this petition, when it was submitted, didn't envision that social equity would be a part, and so that liquid asset number might be lower for someone who is a social equity licensee or applicant. So I think, what I would do is go back and conform that number with whatever is in the consumption lounge regulations. But, I think the board is, overall with that $200,000 number, they want to make sure with consumption lounges or with a temporary cannabis event, you only have something at stake, if you have something to lose. So it's your license.
Right.
But, the board knowing that a certain licensee has $200,000 in liquid assets, they can be pretty sure that the licensee can pay their fine if something bad happens at the either lounge or at the event, if this petition were enacted.
And then, do you mind if I keep going, Chair? Oh, okay, and then for the insurance component, what did you think because I know for events that, especially larger events, you need like a $2 million to $5 million insurance component. How do you feel about that particular?
Yeah, my thought was, these events already, comply with that requirement, and the either sales facilities or cannabis consumption lounges have an insurance component as well.
Right.
So you kind of have two. You have two participants. Both participants in this setup would be insured. So I didn't include anything additional for that.
And then we were having some discussion about the cannabis caterer, where there'd be a promoter, but then that person would then choose a possible cannabis caterer that was already a dispensary or a social equity applicant to come in. And any thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, and to Member Ogden's point, that's exactly how this petition is set up.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
the event owner or promoter, they're not allowed to buy or sell any cannabis. They have to partner with either a sales facility or, if we were able to include lounges, sales facility or lounge to conduct those sales and consumption areas.
Because you have to have a point of sale system. And even though I would love to open this up to cultivators and producers and create that free and open market that Chair Goins mentioned, you do have to have a point of sale. The growers and producers are also selling their product through the dispensary. So you do have a chain of everyone moving more product, which we definitely need to do in this market. Mr. Anderson, are you familiar with how the liquor bidding works and how alcohol contracts are set up for these large events?
I'm not familiar. I kind of assume that besides, liquor laws, which are kind of different from municipality to municipality, taking that out of the equation, they're pretty much like a hot dog vendor or any vendor. You're kind of, inviting people who you've worked with before or come recommended or, I don't know that there's a specific RFP process that's required.
Does the event have to pay more in fees if they have liquor? Like, do they have to get a temporary liquor license?
I would assume.
I think, I'm sorry, but most of the time, this is Member Scott, I think most of the time, larger venues like that already have a liquor license to them. Like I said, the NASCAR, I keep using NASCAR, but they have a liquor permit already. So they already have it there.
So even as a small event, I've done them, and there's nothing for me as the event person that's required if from the liquor company, because they have everything in place.
Right, the liquor caterer.
And so there's nothing to do, there's no fees, there's no extra anything.
Yep.
So there's really no process for that other than securing a vendor, he said, because they're, by law, they have all their stuff in place. Okay. So that's it. And those were and I can speak from the smaller event pieces that you refer to in a sense. There's nothing there that would really incentivize anyone to choose one from the other outside of normal business practice, like maybe a better rates for the liquor or something. But outside of that, it's not.
What I will tell you is the jurisdictions do have a list of those licensed
excuse me, license holder. So if you wanted to have liquor at your event and you weren't sure of the vendor, you could call the city, because we did that. You can call the city and the city would send you a list of vendors that are licensed and are available, which brings us back to why I think it's important for the Cannabis Compliance Board to be the one that says who the available vendors are, and not the event host going to the vendor themselves.
And to her point, a lot of the venues already, they have contracts in place with specific people. You can't even bring an outside liquor company into that venue because they already have contracts. And there's nothing you can do there. So you have to kind of work within their confinements to some degree, depending on the venue with who they have.
And Madam Chair, I would even go further. I'd like to see the local jurisdictions vet the liquor caterers, because sometimes they don't have business licenses within other jurisdictions. So I'd love to see the local jurisdictions be able to vet those persons, because they do a full background check through Metro. And sometimes they want to track where the money's coming from that they're using to buy to do. So I'd like to see if the state wants to license it at some level, but I don't think they do as thorough of a job as the local jurisdictions do. No. But I think the locals do. I mean, I know our licensing division, and they go through a lot of process to make sure that person is well vetted in this process.
So that would go back to your point of, do they have the manpower to do something like that?
But our business license they're already doing it. So, I mean, and they're used to doing it, and they know how to do it effectively. And and we then have the local control that if there's some issue with them, we can call them before council or the commission, and you can take their licenses away, or you can punish them. And the state may be a little slower in doing that because it has to get through a lot more process than we have.
I think that's a brilliant idea, but we do have the petition.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have more questions. I'm sorry. If I may, I'm sorry. This Member Scott again. Now, I asked the last question. What do you envision this looking like? Would it be a cannabis garden, or would you envision all 25,000 people just being able to roam throughout the event and having the ability to use cannabis?
So this would work very much like a kind of a pop-up dispensary or lounge type, situation where the lounge or the dispensary would have a designated area somewhere within the event footprint. And it's required in this application, pursuant to the petition, that the applicant would have to provide that event layout and show where the designated sales and consumption area would be. And that would be the only area where cannabis is, legal.
Member Ullman, for the record, this is awesome in theory, but guys, this is not happening at events. People are consuming in this organized, structured event. It's already for, and I think all events personally should be 21 and up. Now you can consume anywhere. Again, I don't think it's a good idea to make regulations that are good in theory and then they don't uphold. It's silly. You can also drink alcohol anywhere at events. So if we were to move these to 21 and up, then you would have an opportunity to do this. And also just for the safety of patrons, but that's just, my point on that. But I do think that if we're going to do this, you would buy it at one place, you could have a cool consumption area, but people are going to leave. They're going to stick it somewhere that someone can't see it, and they're going to go smoke when they, watch that musician play. So.
Yeah, basically, you don't want to set someone up to fail.
But again, there are major events that don't have the ability to take liquor everywhere. They have a certain beer garden area. You're limited to that particular area to consume it, and then you walk around the rest of the place. I mean, just like Disneyland, you can't smoke it, you can't drink it. You can, but it's only in a designated area.
Relative to the events that we're speaking about, you can drink alcohol anywhere.
But not an event for 25,000. If you go to
EDC.
Well, the EDC, that's a different kind of event, but there's other events that you simply cannot just
There
walk
are,
around.
but not the events in question.
Sure.
I'm going to call to order.
Okay.
We want to stay on task. Do we have any more questions?
I have more questions.
Okay.
So on page 7, you talk about under the age of 18 about attestation, whereas the applicant agrees and understands that the proposed temporary cannabis event shall not allow attendees under the age of 18. Should that be 21? On page 7, number or letter K.
Yeah, that was introduced in the petition to make sure that there was no one who was, a minor, being under age 18 in the event. Clearly, no one under the age of 21 would be allowed within the sales and consumption area, just like, even event that's an adult event wouldn't allow someone 18 to 21 into a beer garden.
I think that should increase.
So there's a requirement for, there's a requirement for, access checkpoints outside the sales and consumption area.
Right.
And also at the point of sale, just like a dispensary or a consumption lounge.
Yeah, I would probably change that to 21.
I would too, because like she said, it's just going to you just don't want to set people up for non-compliance issues.
But again, just because people are going to break the law doesn't mean you shouldn't try to enforce the law. So,
But why have a law if people aren't going to follow it? It's silly.
But again, so that means don't have any law?
No, I'm not saying that. You already have a contained,
Okay.
you already have a contained area of the event, right? Where it's a contained area. So if you can take alcohol somewhere, you should be able to take cannabis as well.
So do we have any other questions for the petitioner?
I have a question. When Member Scott had, asked you earlier about, your thoughts on equity, what you guys, what you thought about some of the things you had mentioned is what we talked about. But what about, and it's mainly just vendors trying to go, utilizing vendors with social equity, inclusion and things, and diversity. What about any financial obligation on the promoter side or the overall event when it comes to either donating to a social equity cause or a fee? I mean, because if not, we're going to put something in place. But if you had any ideas on that, it would be great.
Yeah, I actually do have some ideas. I'm really glad you brought that up. I do think, obviously we got to be careful about any additional taxation. That's something that's, legislative prerogative. And, we have a designation of where cannabis taxes have to go. Obviously they have to go to public schools. But, with regards to something, a mechanism to support social equity and inclusion efforts in the community, I would feel comfortable, if it's a 25,000 person event or up, maybe require a $25,000 donation to a social equity, nonprofit or some kind of a initiative that either the CCB sanctions or there's a list of qualified organizations that you could make that donation to. I think that would be, well within, this committee's authority and something that we could probably expect, especially larger events to do. I'm not sure how that would translate once, if this ever goes beyond a pilot and we're talking about, more events and stuff like that. But, for something 25,000 people are up, I don't want to exclude anyone who might otherwise do this. But, I think that folks who might do this would be comfortable with something like a 25,000.
Member Ullman, for the record, going back to what we were talking about of you have to be on a list with the CCB in good standing, you have to have your bills paid, your taxes paid. One thing that I think would be great is those people also having to show what have you done to give back to the community in the last 5 years, because it was on the application's license and it's actually not being monitored right now. So if you are a dispensary that has just done a canned food drive and nothing else, do you really think you should get this new opportunity? I don't. I think what have you shown in the last 5 years to now get another opportunity? And it really sets those dispensaries up that have been taking that seriously to now get into this pool, to be on this list of being one of these licensees that has this opportunity. Now, if you're a new licensee, i.e. independent lounge or social equity lounge licensee, you haven't had that opportunity, so you would get it automatically. But I'd like to see some kind of accountability for like, what are you doing and what have you done? And unfortunately, there's just some people that haven't done a lot.
I agree with you, but I think that's another discussion because the truth is they should be monitoring that at the CCB on a different area. Like
They
that
should be, but
they're not.
they're not, yeah.
So because they're not, there's people who have, like you said, haven't done anything. I don't know if that should factor into this pilot at this point, but that's something that should be brought up to the CCB for them to start monitoring for when we can take a look at that and hold people accountable. I mean, I know speaking for myself, I'm very involved.
Right, yes.
I would qualify for that. I
Yeah.
would want that, but I also know that there was nothing. You're starting from nothing being monitored, nothing being enforced. And you're going to hold people accountable for that never held accountable before. And now they're being punished here where they should be already been monitored and,
Well,
by
this would be the
CCB.
first opportunity for somebody to apply for another opportunity. And if they weren't doing it, then that's on them. If they were doing it and you're giving back to your community, and again, this is all, how does this support social equity, diversity, and inclusion? If you've already been doing those things out of the goodness of your heart, you didn't even know this opportunity was coming when you apply to get on this list and it says, did you pay your taxes? Did you pay your vendors? What did you do for the community? It's those things that help create, support our initiative of this subcommittee.
Why don't we hold what about the promoter? They have these big events. You're not holding them accountable.
I think the promoter too, yeah.
So my point is, and then you have to have a system for this in your application of almost like a point system or something. I don't even know how you would weight that.
I think
I just think it's right.
Anything on merit is
Right. I don't even know how you would.
because someone
Unless
has
it's
to
a
say
qualifying
whose merit
process.
is better than the other person's
Can't even
merit.
apply.
Very subjective.
Yeah,
It's
but I want to
subjective.
make sure that we're staying focused on the petitioner. Do we have
I
any
agree.
more questions to the petitioner?
Yeah.
I don't care.
No?
No, I don't.
Did you have anything that you wanted to offer?
Look, I just want this, I'm hoping that this will be available for the, widest number of participants. So that we're not just, because again, like it's been discussed here, this is something that's out there in the community happening today. And we want to grow the pie for our cannabis licensees, large and small, and bring something that's, being done legally now into, the legal market, which is going to help the state. And, I want it to help, licensees all the way from, the brand new, consumption lounges to like cultivators, because, ultimately everyone's going to sell more product if we institute something like this.
Madam Chair. Now that we have the social equity applicants that are applying for the lounges, and now that you know that kind of what this conversation we've had, I'd love to see kind of an updated petition incorporating some of those things we've talked about and see if that would be more amenable versus the original.
I think that's a fair ask. I would have to ask, is it all right if I reschedule another meeting asking for an updated, am I in the right to do that?
Yeah, your role is to make recommendations to the larger Cannabis Advisory Commission, and how you choose to do that. You can have many meetings, you can have one meeting. I mean, it's kind of however you choose to do that is kind of up to the purview of this subcommittee, how they want to form those recommendations.
Outline something.
Yes, so Madam Chair, like I said, I'd like to see, like I said, a clean version of this
Okay.
that kind of incorporates, right,
Yeah.
how you would incorporate DEI, just so that so when it goes to the full committee, they have a clean version of what we've recommended.
And then we also can see where the flow is and then have for discussion what we believe could be optional.
And I'd like to see maybe that liquor, I keep saying liquor caterer, the cannabis caterer kind of more prominent, just so that people understand that that's what's being asked for.
You want,
Or even
I want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're asking. You're asking him to define the role of the person who would be giving the product at the event.
Correct. That's why, that way, any layperson reading this would understand, oh, it's a cannabis caterer that's being asked for, or, that kind of thing. So in the definitional section, perhaps you can possibly put a definition of cannabis caterer, and you can take it from any of the liquor caterers, and then just understand that that's kind of what's being asked for, because it's not, I don't know if it's very clear that that's what you're asking for, but everyone else seems to think that that's what we were asking for. But I'd like to see it kind of more prominently in the.
The thing is, that's who applies.
Correct.
And my question to him is, let's say we want you to use more than one vendor. Who applies? Is it a dominant, whoever you guys choose in your group? Or how does that work? And what role, what responsibility does the event promoter take in this application process? Because it doesn't, to me, seem like there's much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to answer that question, if I may. Chris Anderson, for the record. Yeah, I mean, look, the Cannabis Compliance Board regulates, cannabis establishment licensees. And so that's who, under this petition, I wanted the CCB and licensees to be interacting versus, an event promoter who has no interest in being a cannabis establishment. And, they do events. They don't do cannabis. And so that's why, they would bring in a dispensary or a lounge, and that becomes the temporary cannabis event permittee, which is the caterer, for all intents and purposes. Your event permittee is the.
But the expert of the event is the event host, the promoter. Yeah. That's your event. All I'm saying is, there seems to be no real risk for the event person, the EDC host who does this. You have a caterer that has a corner in there and they're supplying a product. The event as a whole, they're now responsible for, right?
Remember,
because they get the license for it.
The petition envisions the licensee being responsible for the designated sales and consumption area. That's one of the reasons why the permittee, we're not creating new licenses, and that's an important point, for a pilot versus a whole new regulatory regime. So the permittee would be responsible for that designated cannabis area. And, that's why you have to show the plans of the event where the designated area is going to be, so that the CCB knows who they're, what area they're regulating.
So that insurance, because reading this, I didn't see it that way. When you supply insurance, that's from the dispensary or lounge to cover the whole event, right? The $5 million, $3 million, is that what it's for? Or is it just for that lounge area?
I don't know if there's an insurance requirement.
Because I guess it is.
Yeah, he was referencing the fact that the promoter will already have that $2 million, $5 million insurance. And then the dispensary or the caterer would also have another level of insurance as well. So I kind of liken this to just, I'm the promoter, I'm marketing, I'm locating the event, I'm paying for the event, and then I hire a transportation part, I get a liquor caterer part, I get a cannabis caterer part. Yes. So again, I just hire subcontractors.
I agree, but the application itself, the event itself is is given to the cannabis business, not them.
Right.
So if something were to happen overall at the event, who's
right. That's why I think that's why I think the petition has to be kind of amended to kind of reflect that type of a structure.
That's what I agree with you. That's what I'm trying to get to, because I'm like, is that how I'm reading it?
That's how it was reading.
Okay, I agree with that.
So I think it has to be. I think it has to be kind of more amended to reflect that caterer type of.
I agree.
What they're saying is, do you understand what they're saying?
So if I understand what they're saying, so number one, just so you know, the CCB will know who the event donor is, because in this application, the permittee, the applicant for the temporary cannabis event permit has to show proof that they've contracted with the event owner to be part of the event. As far as, liability concerns and things like that, I think that's a subject for the law to kind of determine. We don't create laws, here within this agency, and as liability law is way beyond my expertise. So that is If it's contained at all in the petition, I definitely did not intend.
So what
to
it looks
create-
like is the promoter is a vendor.
Yes,
And
yeah.
not the actual host.
Right, and so what I was thinking, remember, that the promoter would then be applying to the state to have cannabis at their event, and then they would also be hiring the cannabis caterer.
It's
to fire the-
basically, according to the way this is written, it's almost the opposite.
I know, that's why I said, I think it needs to be amended.
That's
so that
what I
that's
agree.
So that's the thing, so like I said, the promoter saying, hey, state, I want to have,
Yeah.
or city, or county, I want to have cannabis at this event. I'm going to hire this cannabis caterer person or entity or social
Along with-
equity lounge to then come in to supply that.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I do agree with this. I do,
Sorry, Chair. We can work that.
I agree.
I'd like to see an amended petition that includes the E&I and also, to their point, that separates clearly the what's going to happen with the event and then what's going to happen with the permittee. Because what they're saying is, and I brought this up in the meeting also, I do think there needs to be some qualifying factor for the event. How do they qualify that they're going to have 25,000 people? Because I think that that's a thing as well, but that's neither here nor there. But saying they have to submit to the Cannabis Compliance Board that they want cannabis in their event. And then to the point of what they're saying, the permittee can then apply to be at the event. But just the host can't just go to the vendor and say to the vendor, I want you at my event.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the regulatory body has to know that there'll be cannabis at that event and has to permit that cannabis is allowed at that event, right?
You know, the way that I kind of envisioned it is, a dispensary or a lounge that wants to do something like this, that maybe doesn't want to put on their own event, may, reach out to an event that exists today or a recurring event, something like Life is Beautiful or like an EDC, as you mentioned, may reach out and say, hey, do you guys want to allow cannabis? And if so,
Yes.
we could partner up. And, this petition requires, basically an event owner or producer to say that they want cannabis at the event because the permittee applicant is submitting, a contract or, evidence that they are working with the.
But the event is still your event. It's still your event. It's still an EDC event, whether you have cannabis there or not. It's just a vendor. And that's where this application it seems like it's the opposite.
Right.
And that's where we're trying to say, like, it's just not, the whole onus is on this lounge. And and when you do that, you can't, let's say you want 2-3 lounges. Let's say you want it should really encompass more of the event host, at least break it out, like he said.
But the cannabis, I hear what you're saying now, but the cannabis, to the petitioner's point, that isn't the onus isn't on CCB to do that. That just has to do with how they do business. And that's how it is now with liquor license.
Yep.
How you do business is how you do business, and
Right.
you have all the things and components in place to protect your event, the people at your event, and whatever other vendors that you have made supplications for that. That's not for us to regulate or to even advise the CCB that that's what we desire. That's just the cost of doing business. So what I'd like is,
If I may?
Yes.
Could I propose something?
Yes.
One of the things that, if this subcommittee is amenable, what we could do is, this subcommittee could request and advise the CAC that if the CAC submits recommendations on this petition to the full board, that cannabis consumption lounges, including social equity lounge licensees, should be inclusive in the petition. And also there should be, again, if you see fit, a $25,000 per event fee to be conveyed to a social equity fund, a qualified social equity fund, in conjunction with any event under this petition.
I couldn't support this petition as written now. And I'd love to see it come back to see what the changes were. I don't want to blindly just send this to the CAC and then say, okay, yeah, we're conditioning on this, this, and this. I'd like to see the wording. I'd like to see a cleaner petition. That's just me.
No, and to Member Scott's point, I would also like to see the petition revised to include not just what you said, not what we've said, but also now that you've heard the conversation and you've had the opportunity to hear some of the spirited debate, I'd like to see an actual insert of idealism for social equity and diversity in the petition. That's what I'd like. And then we could schedule a meeting after we've received it. If that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds.
Yeah, if I may, I actually have already revised this to include, some of what's been discussed. And so, wouldn't take long at all. I think it's a good idea. And like I said, I've already begun working on a revision. I didn't think, that revision would come at this subcommittee. I thought it would come at the board, but I'm happy to, for this committee to review that. And make recommendations based off of a revision.
So since I didn't review the CAC comments, did they have comments on the actual petition, or did they just submit it to the subcommittee for their?
We had comments on the absolute petition.
Okay, so I'm assuming that now you have two sets of comments, and I'm assuming you can put all those together, so. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
We are on agenda item 5, and it's discussion of recommendations for the Cannabis Advisory Commission and future meetings. Based on what we've just asked, I'd like to schedule another meeting. I don't have a time or date, but I'd like to do that and send that via email if that's okay, and ask for a revision from Mr. Anderson on our recommendations and also on what he, on a plan for diversity and equity in his petition. And then we could review that petition in that next meeting. That would be my motion is.
I guess, Madam Chair, can we ask the applicant how long he thinks it would take for him to do the revisions and get it back to us? And that would probably help you set your date.
Well, we got to do a poll usually because that helps with everyone's.
Well, if he can get done in 30 days, 20 days, that'll at least tell you.
I think we should just, when it's finished.
Oh, okay.
When it's finished, we'll schedule a meeting.
Gotcha.
Thereafter.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to make a motion to table item 5 until our next meeting after we've had the revisions. That's my motion on the floor.
I second that. That's a voting motion, but we'll.
In favor?
Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Aye. I'm used to calling for the vote. I'm like, okay, aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. And so we're tabling agenda item 5, which moves us to agenda item 6, which is public comment. I'm going to open public comment, and I'd ask that those persons that are doing public comment to limit their comments to 2 minutes and do it. And so the floor is open.
How you doing?
Hey,
Good morning.
how are you?
Antoine Robinson, Meds and Sin, LLC. I just wanted to say that as far as the events go, you guys should give out permits every time. That way you guys can weigh, who's, qualifying as far as social equity and whatnot. So It's just like any other event. Generally, when they have alcohol, they apply for a permit. And so, that way you guys can oversee it. And then that gives them the choice of, then they could choose from, it's basically what you said. Then they can choose from that list. But then you guys, you have the oversight, And I actually, do you have a card? Because I got some ideas for you. Because I think what he's talking, there needs to be like an entity in between that kind of sets up the infrastructure. And then that would help out the smaller guy, right? With negotiating and the infrastructure. So I think a person like him, I think he kind of has that going. And that would actually help out the smaller guy, as far as hitting some of the bigger events, I would have to go into more detail, but that's it.
Great.
I think you guys should do the permits. And also, as far as consumption lounges, it should be them, period. Okay? Let's say a dispensary, yeah, sure. If they want to promote an event, hey, then if they want to put up all the money, do it, then they should be able to, sell their product exclusively. It's their event, you know what I mean? Like, I can see Budweiser doing that, anybody. So I think we're kind of like overthinking it.
Right.
Because there's already precedent as far as businesses go. And the perfect one is alcohol vendors. Sorry, it's already done, you know what I mean? And like she said, as far as consumption, it's already been done. So, on one hand, I do agree with you. Just because people are doing it, that doesn't mean, but there needs to, we need to find some type of medium there. But yeah, I'm a brainstorm, and like I said, I got some ideas for him.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Public comment yet? Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Timothy Eliago. I am representing Cora Cannabis Lounge as a social equity applicant. I just would like to just resurface some of the historically what social equity means and why we're having this discussion and where we started from, which was, I believe, last year within the first subcommittee meeting, what was said initially and where we are today. And basically moving forward, rules that needs to be amended that basically helps the program overall be a very sustainable program. We're here for solutions. And if I may just give a brief introduction, and which is historically, is in the spring of 2017, the Oakland City Council enacted landmark cannabis legislation along with prioritized permitting, exemption from application and permit fees and technical assistance. The council determined that a loan program was needed to assist historically marginalized cannabis operators. Given a lack of personal wealth in low-income communities and federal restrictions on bank lending. Equity loans and grant programs. The equity loan program reinvests cannabis tax revenues into economic opportunities for those most impacted by the war on drugs. Through the program, the city of Oakland seeks to reduce the costly fallout that results from economic marginalization and to contribute to a more prosperous and resilient city. During the early stages of last year, I just would like to recommend for the board that when we pick a chair to represent the community, it is very important that that chair represents the community by involving the community. In other words, what that means is we were just told that the chair has to she could conduct as many meetings as possible to basically take on recommendations from the community to enact those, to be basically recommended to the CCB board. Unfortunately, that hasn't been done. I am speaking from experience. Merit-based, why are you so against merits? If you have contributed positively to the community, I think you should be rewarded. Okay? Because some people did take the initiative to basically perform when others were not available. When kids had cancer and parents were traveling all over the world trying to give those kids satisfaction that they needed, they came to us. We worked those lines, those genetics that you see in these dispensaries today that are operating. Since the year 2009, we've been involved heavily through petitions, getting signatures on incentives on the ballots as well. Why don't we deserve to be? Why don't we deserve it? We have worked to build this industry. Unfortunately, we were written out of it. We never gave any excuses. We continue to be an impact and influence in this industry till today. Till today, the black market is known as being the problematic issue of this industry. Why is that? Because you continue to turn us away from real opportunities. Okay? It is your responsibility as a chair to involve your community. During the legislative session, I believe last year, Assemblywoman Chandra Armstrong Summers suggested that you and I meet so we could have discussions, so we could help make recommendations for the board. You ignored me. You made decisions that were solely based on your efforts, on your agenda, and that's the reason why we're here. So that's the reason why the equity loan program never got even recommended. That is the reason why I am here, to basically acknowledge that you do not represent the community in the way that you say you do. If you truly do, involve us, because our voices do matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, my name is Katrina Saunders, for the record. I've been involved in the Nevada cannabis industry probably since 2006, helping patients. 2010, I met President Obama. I got indicted shortly after for helping medical cannabis patients get legal here in the state of Nevada. I signed up over 800 people before I got indicted, which I protected all those 800 people when I went to federal prison. Now I look at the landscape of the industry many years later, and I see probably people that I've helped that were patients that have stakes in the industry. Meanwhile, I'm still advocating for ownership, for social justice, for federal pardons. I haven't had anyone stand behind me, not the state of Nevada, not local business owners. I've helped make hundreds of millions of dollars for the state of Nevada and local business owners, and being marginalized, not included, more excluded on the rules and regulations that have been put into place. After we went from medical to retail cannabis, they changed the law to exclude felons from working in the industry. After I helped make hundreds of millions of dollars, sacrificed my family, my children, my time, my energy, my education, I've dedicated to this industry and to the people of the state of Nevada. It's really disrespectful at this point in time that lounge applications went out. I had 3 or 4 people that wanted to sponsor and help do business with me. I was once again left out because the neighborhood where I've resided with my mom off and on for the past 5 years is 0.5% off from qualification. My mother's house was raided by the ATF, the FBI, the DEA, right after my father went to work at the test site. She should not have to be involved in this as well. I've sustained so much trauma. I have PTSD. I've reached out to multiple people's organizations on asking for help in regards to what I've dealt with and what I've been dealing with, what I continue to deal with on a daily basis. I still continue to do advocacy with Last Prisoners Project and Americans for Safe Access, helping people get out of prison that are still incarcerated, because there's still over 40,000 people incarcerated for cannabis conviction crimes. There needs to be real ownership, not just consumption lounges that were only added on as after fact because local business owners were already built out and they're trying to get their money back. This is not real social equity. It's not real justice. It's not real inclusion. It's criminal behavior, the rules and regulations that you guys have made up to help the existing business owners continue to sustain their generational wealth while leaving small business owners and people that want to get in the industry, cultivators like Ellie that have dedicated his time, energy, and resources to help people that were suffering like myself. We shouldn't be marginalized. We shouldn't even be having to speak at this late date. And like he said, the reason why the black market is thriving, because you guys keep on putting taxes, more rules, more regulations. Normal people that are struggling day to day can't afford to come up with these things. So it's criminal that you guys keep on adding all these different things on and then penalizing other people for wanting to be in business and that don't follow your rules and regulations. It's ridiculous. But I've been dealing with this for over 10 years. I just had a new grandson. My next generation, when I look into his eyes, he's my why on fighting for real ownership, which should be cultivations, dispensaries, not just what you guys think we should have. I did not go to prison and lose my family and my life and be homeless in the process and stand up for an industry to be disregarded like I didn't do anything. Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman would roll in their graves for the landscape of how things are today. And I would like some clarification on when I can get my card back, because I have people that would like to work with me and formulate products because I'm an actual patient and people value my insight and respect what I've done in the industry. And I'm tired of being disregarded like I haven't done what I've done. It's disrespectful and I demand justice. Not only for myself, but for those who do not have a voice. And my name's Katrina, and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Denise Mejia. I'm also participant of the Social Equity License on NND Enterprises. I'm also the co-founder of the International Cannabis Businesswomen Association and member of CEIC. So I'm pretty involved, got myself pretty involved from California out here to Nevada. There's a lot with the changes here in regulation and so on and so forth. But I think it's time to also find unity in what's happening throughout in general, not only the industry. I've listened to their stories and their comments, and I feel that social equity should also be recognized. So ignoring the capacity of the donations or the return on investment to the community is a form to really put value on everything that we're all doing, not necessarily and only the lounges or just the dispensaries, but I think we really need to put value in that because we need to know where the funds are really going and making sure that these funds are really being allocated to diverse communities. I noticed that out of the applicants, there was very few Hispanics. I'm one of those few Hispanics, but I joined forces as a setting an example to apply for the social equity with African-American partner. So the idea is to demonstrate that we can come together and we can do these changes and be mindful that we have been the ones left behind, all of us. The Black and brown communities have been left behind, but we need to set the example of showing that some of this money that we're getting alone on the applications, 50 applications were submitted, and how much did they have to fork out of these applications? The CCB made over $500,000 on just the applications. So where is this money really going to after you allocate it to your costs and everything? But I think one of the things that we really need to emphasize don't just disregard what people are giving back to the community, because that's what we're setting the example of the goal of what we're really trying to accomplish here. Put us at the same level as the big guys, showing what we've been able to do back and give back to the community. So let's not just look at it from how we make money, but how are we really giving back to our community, to our disadvantaged community. So as we're good about having award ceremonies, we should be acknowledging those dispensaries and communities that are actually giving back and showing it physically, visibly, because if you don't see it, you don't really know that it's really happening, and you're not really giving value to giving back to communities, as all of the programs that some of these women have been through, all of these violent communities, mental health, medical. I mean, you don't just have to give it to a nonprofit, give it where you're going to really have an impact. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you for your comment.
Yes, greetings. My name is Eugene Wicks, AKA Jean-Claude Turan. Friend Ellie spoke. I think he is one of the most knowledgeable people about this cannabis industry and about cannabis itself. His work has created medicines. This man has done more than anyone I know. And I think he should be rewarded with something. And I'd like for, if y'all don't know him, get to know him and know what he's about. Because he's very serious. As far as I'm concerned, he's a genius. So I want everybody to please listen to him, and whatever recommendations he makes, I believe they're for the good of the community. I'm 78 years old. Cannabis has been part of my life even when it wasn't legal. I was 15 years old down south and stole $24. People gave me 20 years in prison. I came home when I was 27. It was the first time I ever smoked a joint. But marijuana got me through a whole lot. And I'm just glad I'm living in a state where it's legal, because I got tired of being a criminal. But anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Is that the last public comment?
This is my first meeting. I've never came to any of these meetings. I'm a native.
Can you give your name for the record?
Oh, Melinda Monroe.
Thank you.
And I also know Ellie for a long time. And, you know, the things that we've had to do that were labeled as criminal to help people that had breast cancer and that had other medical conditions that, you know, pills didn't do it for them. But anyway, he is a genius, and he is transparent, and he's willing, he knows so much, and he needs to be part of representing our social transparency for people to know about what's going on. Because we do want to be a part of this. Because when this program first started, I know about when they used to go to, when they started going to the weed man and they started asking them how to do this. Okay, and they thought that they were going to be part of this. Okay, the blackface is the part that has had so much demise. Okay, I've even went to jail for just some little grains. Okay, people can criminalize you and actually ruin your life not knowing, going to court and paying fines. And when you have a family, that can it can put you back so far, you know, that you probably end up doing something criminal just to stay afloat, you know? And I just don't see the representation in the stores, in the dispensaries, you know? I don't see the representation in the strands, other than Mike Tyson and Wiz Khalifa. Okay, that's not, you know, that's not the only people. So we do want to be part of this generational wealth. We've been part of the generational deprivation of it. You know, so and it's not like you're doing us a favor. It's giving back, it's balance. It helps your soul when it comes down to it. Okay, I'm just saying, because when you close your eyes for the last time, baby, you got to navigate if you didn't know. But anyway, I'm just saying that. And I heard some things, you know, about like the $25,000. I thought that was a nice thing. I just heard different things that, like, if there was a meeting that I could put my input in it or be part of the community. Because like I said, I'm a native and I'm 50 plus years old. So I've seen a lot and I've been through a lot. So, you know, and I'm still here and I'm glad, you know, this is my journey. I asked to come down here for a reason. But anyway, that's all I have to say, but maybe if somehow your meetings can be a little more transparent for the people that you are representing, you know, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other public comments?
Hello, my name is Chandler Cooks. I want to speak about a pathway to ownership that I thought was very unique that didn't pass. It was AB 322. It was a portable cannabis vendor license. It was something that didn't pass, but I believe that was really a pathway that would help many of the people who came up here to speak that offered ownership. And it offered something that the little people, and I don't even want to call them little people because they're not little people, but non-licensed, unlicensed people, allowed them a way to become great and provide that generational wealth and heal that trauma that many of the people spoke of. I want to thank CEIC for the great work that they did in promoting that and initiating that. But if that does come back to light in the next legislative session, I would hope that you all bring some consideration to that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm not gonna sit down. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a graduate. I'm amazing, and I'm a graduate of CEIC. So all that I have learned and have used up until this point, and I'm gonna speak especially where I came from the last time. I don't want for us to be seen as a crack house. Again, I said this the last time, and I don't want to be seen as just a handout, because again, I feel like it does come from along the lines of sharecropping. Again, I have to be placed in a position to where you feeding me. And that's not wealth. That's not generational wealth. That's not independence. $200,000 for a cannabis consumption license is absolutely, for some people, out of their range. It's ridiculous, because how do I come up with that type of money to be able to build? I don't know. When Aisha taught us a lot about, and the people that she brought in who were facilitators for us, they gave us a lot of information, probably on overload, because I'm still trying to digest all that I learned back in May, correct? I don't know, I can't remember. My days leave me. However, I know you guys are talking about specifically investment and 25,000 people in one place. And that's all good. But if this isn't handled, I feel like, and the people who have trudged these murky roads and have put their feet in the trenches to really make this happen. I come from a medicinal place when we talk about marijuana. The plant is a savior for a lot of people. And a person
And the reason why I became a part of it is because it was personal. I refuse to continue to take opioids that I know are addicting. I work in the industry with people who have addictions, so it would be absolutely ludicrous for me to ascribe to something that I know would make me sick, when I know that there's something more greater that can give me benefit. And that's where I come from. But I don't want it reduced to a space of anyone who takes on the opportunity to be sharecropped and to be looked at as if they're a crack house. And that's my truth. That's what I'm speaking towards. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, if there's no more public comment, I appreciate the board's time. And I know this has been a hefty meeting, but I think it was resourceful and, dare I use the word, uprooting. And we will, Ms. Sarah will help us get us ready for the next meeting, along with the petitioner submitting his revisions, and then we'll reconvene. I appreciate your time again, and this meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good job.